Hello and welcome to Moving Beyond Stigma, a podcast about mental health and all that is connected to it. I am your host, Michelle Crossman.
If we're going to talk about mental health, we need to talk about how, as a society, we don't know how to love a lot of people and we don't know how to care for them.
Yeah.
Or even just like be with them, exist with them. I've experienced so much like people being just like uncomfortable by looking at me. Or a thing I get a lot is like hyper religious people who want to like pray for me.
Yeah.
They'll ask for consent to pray for me, but not to touch me, which is interesting.
Huh.
I think it's so interesting to me to see how like people treat me like I'm sort of on the other side of this like wall.
Right.
I kind of describe it a lot of like feeling like I'm in like a glass box or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like everyone's on the other side of this glass box, right? Other people have similar problems to me, but they don't want to have similar problems to me.
Right.
If they were willing to see themselves in me, then we could connect and I could actually teach them a lot about how to navigate their own shit.
Exactly.
Right?
You can learn so much from each other when you are actually genuinely open and willing to have a conversation and willing just to acknowledge yourself and those around you as they are without making it this big, awkward, weird thing, because it doesn't have to be that. It shouldn't be that, you know? Like, we're all just existing in our own ways. And then when you have like a community and friends and things where you can actually connect and have open dialogues, the opportunity to learn more is just continuously growing. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that I am so incredibly grateful for my queer community, and the disabled community and the mental health, like just all of us actually talking. For so long I would just not talk about stuff because I thought I wasn't allowed to, I didn't. And then when I started, I was like, we can all relate on so many different levels, even if it's in a different way, especially with neurodivergency. Like, as a kid, I thought I was stupid, and people would make jokes.
And I think the function of like being in a society where there are certain things you're not supposed to talk about is that we all feel alone. And it really reinforces that idea that everyone should be going towards this unattainable goal because no one will actually talk about the things they're really struggling with.
Exactly.
And so then it just keeps going, right?
Yeah, it just continues in that cycle.
I really want us to build systems where like people don't have to pretend to be something that they're not.
Yeah.
And that has space for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the reality that we live in right now.
Gosh, not even close.
But I think some of the problems are coming from that thinking that you have to like have all the right answers.
Yeah.
Instead of recognizing that there are some things that you don't know, and that's okay to not know. Don't pretend to know things that you don't. You can ask people things sometimes and just be okay if they don't want to answer, you know?
Yeah.
And when it comes to accessibility, I just like get a lot of like people being really anxious about like, oh, like how do I do this? Like, I don't know what to do. Like, what are all the right answers? But at the end of the day, it's like, do you know all the different ways there are to be human? And are you willing to accept that you don't know that all the time? And are you willing to change things as you go along, right? Are you willing to seek out creative solutions in a world where it is not going to be offered to you on a platter? Most infrastructure is not accessible. So like, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
Right? Like, what are you, like, I don't know. Like, I think there's a lot of like, well, this thing isn't built accessibly, so we can't really do anything about it. And I'm like, well,
you could though.
You could. I've seen people fundraise for things that are more frivolous than that.
For
right?
sure. Exactly.
There are so many things that people have, places where people have willingly given information, books, podcasts,
yes,
social media, like, and so it's like, if you don't know something, there are ways to learn.
Exactly.
Like, it's not like there's a lot of ways to learn about people's experiences, but I would recommend trying to learn it from the people themselves instead of somebody who knows them or somebody who claims to speak for them.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
I think that's where people kind of get sidetracked, is they're like I'll do research, and then they'll like read about disabled people's experiences from their mothers. Being the mother of a disabled person is an experience, but that is not the experience of being disabled. And yes, like caregivers are also not treated well within the system.
Oh God, not at all.
I want to acknowledge that we're not the people who know it's us, right? If you're gonna learn about disability, learn it from people who are disabled, who have willingly given that information.
Yes.
Because I remember like when I was younger, random strangers would always ask me for like my medical history or information, like what
Wow.
happened to you,
Yeah.
like what, you know. And for a while, because of the conditioning of ableism, I felt like I had to tell them my whole life story essentially every time somebody would ask me that. So I'd be like, oh, I had like all these surgeries, blah blah blah. As I grew more and like realized that like that's kind of like a, like I wouldn't just go up to someone and be like, so what's your medical history? People feel entitled to do that to people that they see as disabled, right? I feel like an equivalent for like trans people is like people being like, oh, like have you had the surgery, or what's in your pants? And it's like, I'm not asking you about your genitals, right?
No, like nobody owes you that information, and it's so invasive, and like it's personal. Just because you see that it's different from you does not give you the right to just jump in and ask very personal questions. You don't owe them that. Like you can say, this is an inappropriate question, actually. But it's so hard when you are so conditioned to be like, oh, yes, let me tell you.
And because also a lot of people react really negatively when you say, I don't want to talk about it. And like, that's part of the reason why I started doing it so young, is because people not only expect it, but like feel violently entitled to it, right?
Yes.
You are not entitled to anyone's story. People's stories are things that they should be giving willingly.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, if somebody wants to give me their story, they will. I don't really have to ask for it in that way, because I feel like the way that a lot of people will approach me is like to put a distance between me and them, as like, you're that kind of person and I'm this kind of person,
right?
And I think I would be a lot more willing to talk about those things, because it's also very one-sided. It's like they're not telling me about their medical history or their experiences.
No,
right?
Of course not.
I talk a lot about disability and ableism, but also it's like, I don't know all I don't have the lived experience of every disability, right? I want to also say that disabled people can also be ableist. Like there's so many ways. There's so many ways to be ableist.
Yeah.
It's important that we all have a little bit of humility and understanding of what we actually know and what we are actually like entitled to. People are allowed to have boundaries.
Exactly. Boundaries are not a bad thing at all.
Asserting a boundary doesn't make somebody mean. And I think that certain people are, anytime they assert a boundary, it's seen as a negative thing. And I think, you know, I find that to be true in like people who are sort of easily identifiable as lower on the hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
Parent disabilities, I think.
Yeah.
Because I think some disabilities are like, you know, maybe if you're deaf, for example, it's not like a thing you see, but like as they move through the world, then people are, you know what I mean? Like the darker your skin is, right? I feel like the more people feel like if somebody like puts a boundary up, then they're being mean.
Yeah.
And like visibly queer people, right? And not to say, you know, all the identities and things are valid, everyone's experience is valid, but it's still true that people get treated differently based on how they're perceived.
You can't deny that. I wish it wasn't a fact, obviously, because it is very harmful, but like there's no denying that is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just adds so many extra layers on top of the already difficult world that we live in for numerous other reasons too. And then it all just adds up, and it becomes this very hard battle on a day-to-day basis when it shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah.
One thing I just want to share with you, and I don't know if this is one thing I was curious about actually in the States. So in Canada, like we have our disability programs. So you get government funding and things like that. And you have to apply for it. And I know quite a few people who have applied for it. And the process itself is extremely ableist.
Yes, absolutely.
And they deny you so quickly and make it so difficult, where the mental capacity and emotional capacity alone that it takes can be traumatizing.
Yes.
And and you can be fighting it for years before they say yes.
Definitely the same in the US. On that kind of front. There's really this, I think also a lot of people expect that families will take care of disabled people. And that can sometimes be true, but should not be the default, because even with families who like provide support, that doesn't always mean that care is provided, right? And it might, you know, that care might come with strings attached, is a thing that I hear a lot with disabled people, of like wanting to have a certain level of like, I don't think independence is the right word, but just autonomy.
Yeah, definitely autonomy. Yeah.
But not being able to because, it's just not feasible to like pay for your life. Also, like things are more expensive when you're disabled, right? In a lot of ways. And it varies depending on disability, but it's
Of
even
course.
like for my medical equipment, there's so much. And also, like, depending on what insurance I have, like, the cost of my medical equipment can be so, like, I have to have insurance actually in order to afford my medical equipment.
Yeah, I believe
And then
that.
there's a lot of people who like can't afford insurance and then can't, like, I'm honestly like, it's very difficult for me to imagine someone with my, like, how someone with my similar like disability experiences navigates without insurance in the US.
Yeah,
I know they exist,
of course.
but it's really hard. Yeah, the process of getting resources for disability stuff in general, but especially from the government, is very ableist and not disability justice oriented, right?
No.
I know, like, in the US, I think that the max amount of money that you can have in your account as a person who's receiving disability benefits is 2,000 US dollars.
Yeah.
If you ever get more than that, you're off of disability. And so it's like, people are like, save for retirement, and it's like, what? It's like,
Actually, not allowed.
even to like buy a wheelchair. You
Yes.
can't even save to buy a wheelchair.
No.
Right? It's bad. It's not made with disabled people in mind. And part of the reason why they do that is because they don't want to give that kind of care because it like costs money or whatever. But it's also like, people are putting money, like, the US has one of the largest like budget towards the military forces and, worldwide genocide.
Exactly.
So I don't really have like any sympathy for that, where I'm like, okay, like, we could like cut our budget in half and still be like one of the like people who still like puts the most towards that, right?
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people, when they become disabled, they think like, oh, like, when I'm disabled, then there'll be resources. And it's like, no, actually, like, even when they come at like a rate, like at a time frame that is so unpractical for anyone. I've put a lot of work to build like a system of social support, but that's also not as accessible to everyone for various reasons. I don't know what I would do, like, if I didn't have that kind of like system of people who were helping me with various things, like from cleaning to just like giving, like, helping me, like, whenever I go to an event, like, I don't go to events by myself because it's just too much work. Like, because these are not accessible, I need there to be people who can drop me off, and then they have to be able to walk. And then I'm like, all my friends are disabled also, so this is hard.
Yeah. Like, how do we do this? Yeah. We have that financial limit as well with our program. I don't know if it's the exact same. They just recently changed it. I think it was lower, or it was recently increased.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's roughly around the same. And yeah, you can't, like, I've had to have conversations in my family about that. Like, okay, what do you do if you come into money for these reasons? Like, you can't. There's just no proper way. The one thing I do appreciate about our programs that we have is that it does cover medical costs for, again, not everything, but like a lot of like medication, specifically for any prescriptions, things like that. That is covered. Where if you are uninsured and not on any disability like myself, then you're paying out of pocket for everything, right? Like, you don't, so there is that, which I think can be make or break for a lot of people, because then they're at least getting those things that they need. But again, what they're getting is still not livable. And then all of that just connects to everything.
Yeah, it's very, I don't know. I just feel like it's not as hard as people make it seem to just give people what they need.
Yeah.
Because, I'm also like, I have insurance, but it's like, the reason I'm able to do this is because I have a lot of family support, right? And it's just very like, I don't know. And the more sort of like specialized your disabilities are, or the more rare they are, the more difficult it is to find things, right? So like, a lot of durable medical equipment is not properly covered, because there's prescriptions, which are like what you take, but then there's like durable medical equipment, which is like the medical equipment you need. That can be really hard to find. If I get a new insurance, I have to like call in the US, like, I have to call them and be like, how do I get this? And usually they don't know.
Yeah.
And they'll give me a list of like 30 places to call. And then I have to call each one. They haven't done any of this work.
No, of
right?
course not.
It's not a good time.
No.
I don't think that people understand that a lot of people die because of this.
Exactly.
Like, no, it's not just hard, it's deadly.
It is,
right? And the lower you are on that hierarchy, the more deadly it is.
Yes.
Right? And I think that a lot of people don't, even when they're thinking about oppression, they're not considering how many people have died because of those aspects of the system. None of this should be happening, right? I'm not trying to say like this is worse or better. You know, people can see certain more like obvious forms of violence.
Yes.
Right. With this, I feel like there's so much violence that happens that's just every day. Right.
Yeah.
The violence of bureaucracy, you know, like needing to fill out a paper on time and then you miss by a day and then all of a sudden you have to pay $500 million. Right. It's like, in the US, one of the leading causes of homelessness is medical bills.
Yeah.
Ambulance bills, my God.
So expensive.
That's why so many disabled people are like, get me an Uber if I,
Actually, though, yeah.
Like if something happens to me because it'll be cheaper.
Yeah. Definitely really appreciate you coming in and bringing all of this up as a topic because it is something that a lot of people, I think, just don't grasp.
Yeah.
Again, just because maybe it's easier not to, or that ease of living in oblivion, or just not understanding, not taking the time to ask the questions, and realizing how interconnected all of it is, from disability, ableism, racism, homophobia, any kind of oppression, being any kind of a marginalized community adds so much to just making life harder. And it shouldn't. And so many people just, again, look away or ignore it or say, yeah, it's not that bad though. But it is. It is literally life or death in a lot of scenarios and leading.
And it's like, you might think it doesn't apply to you, but by the time it applies to you, if you didn't care, then you're kind of screwed, right?
Exactly.
Like, you want these things to be there for you when you really need it, right? But if you get in an accident like tomorrow, right? And then all of the sudden this all applies to you. I think it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't understand this until it happens to them. You know, of course there are some things that you can't understand until it happens to you, but I think that there's a lot that you can if you try, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, especially for any kind of like like people who care about mental health, that kind of thing, it's like, I cannot take any mental health like organization or platform seriously that does not talk about ableism, because I feel like a lot of the issues that people have with being mentally ill are not just about being mentally ill, but about the ableism that they receive because they are mentally ill. Being depression is the one that I was first diagnosed with, because they're like, you're definitely depressed. But like, being depressed sucks, but it would suck a lot less if people weren't shitty to me because I am depressed. And if like there weren't, I'm like, I have ADHD, so it's like, all of these things where it's like, you have to do it by a specific time and there's no like flexibility, right? Like, that's a form of ableism.
Yeah, like that's actually extremely difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah. And it's like, so if you care about mental health, like my, sort of thought is like, if you care about mental health, if you care about those things, you really cannot not talk about ableism, or else, if like, to me, it feels like you're missing the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100% agree. It's very frustrating when you have those conversations around mental health of like, I've had even just friends who I'm not really close with anymore because, they say those things and you're like, oh, I see. I use like, okay, I see where we're at. I see where our priorities are. Yeah. This is a big deal, actually. But, just like, oh, have you tried exercising? Have you tried this? And just going to like the most basic like thing. Do you not understand that when things are bad within your mental illness, it is disabling?
Yeah.
There are times like, cannot get out of bed. It is not a choice. Actually cannot get out of bed. How it just so easily is like, oh, but did you drink water that day? Did you get in the sun?
Yeah.
Just zero understanding of the actual weight of it. And it's frustrating. And that's why, honestly, I love to have these conversations to gain even more insight. And, like, it's a place where we are all constantly learning and constantly growing, and there's always more to take in. So I appreciate you taking your time today and not only sharing this time and space with me, but again, to those who listen. It's a very important conversation to have, and I really appreciate the insight that you've brought and your perspective and your own personal journey that you've had to kind of lead you to where you are. And it is very evident how much passion you have and empathy that you have, and that is a very beautiful thing to see. So I'm very grateful that we were able to have this conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate that a lot. One last thing I want to say
yes, please.
I want to shout out a group called Project Let's. I think that, I just really like a lot of the work that they do.
Yeah.
And I think that for people who are sort of struggling to understand, like, what does it look like for people who care about mental health to, like, sort of incorporate all of the stuff that we were talking about into their understanding of mental health, I think Project Let's is does a pretty good job of that, especially especially compared to just like other places that I've seen.
Yeah.
I just wanted to shout that out because I think that like sometimes people are like, okay, like I don't know what to like. So you've told me that I don't know what I'm doing. So what do I do? And I want to I want to point to that as like a resource for
Here's
people.
A very good place to start. Yeah, I love what they post. I've been following them for a long time.
This podcast being like moving beyond stigma, I think, what I really want to drive home is that you cannot talk about any of this stuff without talking about ableism, right? If you are somebody who like cares about mental health, but haven't taken the steps to like learn about ableism, that this is my invitation to you to do so.
Yes, I love that. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jazz, for being here. And thank you again to all of the listeners for joining in. And once again, this is Moving Beyond Stigma.